In the silence before dawn, 3.4 million years ago, the world looked nothing like the one we know today. The Earth itself felt younger, raw, restless, and dangerous. Africa, the cradle of our distant ancestors, pulsed with life. Endless plains stretched under a pale horizon where the sun had yet to break, and shadows clung to thorny trees and tall grass swaying in the faint breath of wind. Here, every sound meant something. The distant cough of a lion, the low growl of hyenas, the sharp calls of birds that warned of movement below. To live in this world was to feel every heartbeat against the unknown, to know that each step could mean survival or death. The hominins of this age, distant relatives of what would one day become us, stirred awake in rocky shelters and beneath twisted acacia trees. Their world was not one of safety or certainty but of constant vigilance. Fire was not yet theirs. Stone tools were primitive, crude flakes struck from larger rocks, but even these sharp edges were precious, sometimes the line between life and starvation. Theirs was a fragile existence balanced against predators larger, faster, and deadlier than themselves. Yet, hidden in this struggle, something remarkable was beginning to take shape. The first whispers of hunting tactics were emerging, not as coordinated drives or weapon-wielding assaults, but as the raw, instinctive beginnings of strategy. Survival was no longer about running from danger alone. It was about watching, waiting, and learning. Every predator they encountered, saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas, packs of wild dogs, taught them something. The silence before an ambush, the patterns of prey when they fled, the way vultures circled above a kill, all of it became knowledge. And knowledge in this age was as valuable as any weapon. Picture a small group huddled near a rocky ridge as dawn crept over the land. They were thin, their bodies lean from days of hunger. The night had been long, the air cold. The ground itself radiated chill into their bones. But now their eyes turned outward, scanning the grasslands for signs of movement. A herd of antelopes grazed in the distance, and with them came opportunity. Not to bring one down directly, they lacked the speed, the strength, the claws, but perhaps, if they were patient, they could steal. They could shadow the herd, watching from afar, waiting for the predators to strike. Lions would hunt, hyenas would scavenge, and when the chaos cleared, these fragile humans would move in, snatching what was left. This was the earliest form of hunting, not by fang or claw, but by endurance, patience, and nerve. To live on scraps was to survive another day, and every day survived was another chance to learn. The land itself was both gift and curse. The savanna teemed with life, yet every creature was locked in the same desperate cycle: eat or be eaten. Massive elephants with towering tusks trampled the grasses, rhinoceroses carved paths through the brush, and crocodiles lurked silently in muddy waters. The air carried the scent of wildfires sparked by lightning, the metallic tang of blood from distant kills, and the musk of predators marking their territory. For the early humans, it was a constant reminder that they were small, vulnerable, and unarmed. Yet within their eyes burned something none of the beasts around them possessed: a flicker of thought, of foresight. They began to follow trails, not just randomly, but with intent. A broken branch, a tuft of fur, tracks pressed into wet soil, all became clues. Slowly, instinct was evolving into observation, and observation into tactics. Imagine them crouching low, pointing at signs in the dirt, grunting softly to each other. Words as we know them did not yet exist, but gestures, glances, and murmurs carried meaning. Communication was born out of necessity. Together they began to shape the earliest seeds of cooperation. And still, predators pressed in on every side. Leopards prowled the night, their glowing eyes watching from trees. Saber-toothed cats lurked in the tall grass, their fangs gleaming in the fading light. Even the scavengers, the jackals, the hyenas, were threats, ready to turn on the humans themselves if the chance arose. To step outside the safety of rocks and trees was to gamble with death. But hunger forced them onward. At times, survival meant confrontation. Picture a scene. A hyena drags the carcass of a gazelle through the brush, its cackling laughter filling the air. From the shadows, a small group of humans emerges. Stones in hand, sticks raised high, they scream and shout, voices carrying over the grasslands. The hyena hesitates, snarling, its powerful jaws clamped on the kill. But the noise grows louder, the stones strike closer, the determination in those strange upright creatures undeniable. The hyena, despite its strength, retreats into the shadows. Victory, small, fragile, but real. A scrap of meat torn from bone becomes a feast. Each success carved itself into memory. They were learning not just to endure, but to push back, to carve a space for themselves in a world that wanted them gone. And with each victory, however small, their courage grew. Yet, courage was not enough. They needed more. They began to understand the rhythm of the land, the migrations of animals, the seasons of rain and drought, the patterns of predators. This was the true beginning of hunting as a tactic, the blending of patience, observation, and timing. To chase endlessly across the plains was suicide, but to wait, to anticipate, to act when the moment was right, that was survival refined into strategy. As the sun climbed high and the air shimmered with heat, the humans retreated to shade. Thirst burned their throats, their bodies slick with sweat. Water was scarce and rivers carried dangers of their own. Crocodiles lunged from the shallows, hippos defended their pools with deadly aggression. To drink was to risk death. And so they learned to approach with care, to send one ahead while others watched from safety, scanning the water for the faintest ripple. Every act of survival demanded awareness. The children, clinging to their mothers, watched all of this. They learned not through words but through sight, imitation, and fear. They saw their fathers brandish stones, their mothers gather roots and fruits, their elders teach by gesture where to step and where to hide. In their wide eyes was the beginning of something greater, the passing of knowledge, the first sparks of culture. Night, when it fell, was absolute. Without fire, the darkness was alive with movement, with sounds that made the heart race and the skin prickle. They huddled close, pressing against one another for warmth, every ear straining for the crack of a branch or the whisper of padded paws. Above them, the stars stretched endless and eternal. Did they look up and wonder? Did they feel, in some small way, the vastness of the sky and their place beneath it? Perhaps. Or perhaps all they felt was fear, the raw need to see another dawn. But even in the fear, there was resilience. They survived not because they were the strongest or the fastest, but because they adapted. Every day was a lesson. Every danger was a teacher. And slowly, very slowly, those lessons were shaping them into something new. Here, at 3.4 million years ago, life was brutal, short, and uncertain. Yet it was also the crucible in which humanity was forged. The first sparks of strategy, of cooperation, of thought beyond the moment, all were being born in this age. And though they did not know it, though they could not yet imagine it, they were walking the path that would one day lead to fire, to tools, to civilization itself. This was life 3.4 million years ago. A fragile existence balanced between hunger and hope, between predator and prey, between fear and the first fragile seeds of courage. And as the sun set over the endless plains, painting the world in blood-red light, these early humans pressed on. For them, there was no choice. To stop was to die. To move was to live. And so they moved, step by step, into the long story of us all. The second day begins beneath a rising sun, and the savanna glows gold. Long shadows stretch across the land, cutting through the tall grass where predators hide. The world stirs with motion. Zebras snort and flick their tails against the morning flies, antelopes bend low to graze, and vultures rise into the warming air. their dark wings circling the sky like silent warnings. To the modern eye, this landscape might seem breathtaking, even serene. But for the early humans who walked here, every detail was a signal. The land was a map written in movement, in sounds, in smells. To survive, they needed to read it better than anyone else. Hunger drove them forward. Their stomachs had been empty through the long night, and every step was heavy with exhaustion. Yet hunger sharpened the mind as well as the body. They were learning to follow the movements of the great predators, not to avoid them, but to anticipate them. It was here, in this vast African plain, that they began to shadow the most feared hunters of their age. The lions moved first. A pride, lean and patient, stalked the herd at dawn. The humans watched from a distance, crouched low, barely daring to breathe. The lions' bodies pressed against the earth, tails flicking, muscles twitching with restraint. The air itself seemed to tighten as predator and prey faced one another in silence. Then, an explosion of chaos. Dust rose, hooves thundered, and the lions struck. Antelope scattered, eyes wide with terror. For the humans, this was not just spectacle, it was opportunity. As the lions wrestled their prize to the ground, the humans waited. Their hearts pounded, but their feet remained planted. They knew better than to rush. Patience was their weapon. Hours later, when the pride lay in the shade, bellies swollen and jaws stained with blood, the humans crept closer. Flakes of stone glinted in their hands. The lions lifted their heads, eyes burning with warning, but the humans stayed low, circling, waiting. Only when the great cats had finally withdrawn, leaving bones behind, did the humans surge forward. Here was their harvest. Not fresh kills, but the remains of what the lions could not consume. Marrow, rich and fatty, lay hidden in the bones. Flesh clung to sinew, scraps torn away with fingers, pounded with stones, savored as victory. It was not hunting in the way we think of it, but it was a beginning. It was survival through cunning, through nerve, through timing. Yet lions were not the only predators to teach them. The hyenas ruled the night with laughter that echoed across the plains. Their jaws could crush bone, their numbers could overwhelm, but they, too, were hunted, not by claws or teeth, but by persistence. Imagine a circle of humans approaching as dusk fell, their voices raised, stones clutched in their hands. The hyenas snarled, snapping their teeth in defiance. But the humans screamed louder, hurled rocks closer, their strange, upright bodies glowing pale under the moonlight. Slowly, reluctantly, the hyenas gave ground, and in their retreat, another prize was won. This was the first form of what would one day be called intimidation hunting, the art of claiming food not by strength but by psychology. They learned that predators, no matter how fierce, weighed risk against reward. They learned that loud voices, stones, and sheer persistence could tip that balance. The hyena might be powerful, but it did not want to die. And so, the humans advanced. Still, danger lingered at every turn. Sometimes the predators did not yield. Sometimes they turned, jaws wide, eyes blazing. There were losses, too many to count. Children dragged away, hunters mauled in the grass, mothers left to wail in silence. The cost of learning was written in blood. But even these tragedies became lessons. Each death taught the survivors where to stand, when to retreat, when to press forward. Every scar became a story, and every story became a guide for the next generation. Day by day, they learned to expand their tactics. One group might shadow vultures, following their spiraling descent to a kill. Another might track the scavengers, knowing that where jackals circled, food was near. They began to divide their roles, some watching, some approaching, others standing guard. Though they could not yet speak as we do, their eyes, their hands, their voices carried meaning. Cooperation was no longer accidental. It was becoming deliberate. And in that cooperation lay the first shadow of what we now call hunting. One day, they followed the trail of a wounded wildebeest. Its leg was broken, its gait uneven, its body trembling with exhaustion. Predators had already circled but hesitated, wary of the open ground. The humans, however, pressed forward. They tracked it hour after hour, their feet cutting into the earth, their eyes fixed on the staggering beast. The wildebeest slowed, faltered, and at last collapsed. The humans descended. They had not killed it with tooth or claw, but with endurance. This was the earliest spark of persistence hunting. The idea that patience, not speed, could bring down prey. It was a revelation. For the first time, they were not scavengers but hunters in their own right. The taste of fresh meat changed them. The fat fed their brains. The protein fed their bodies. They grew stronger, more alert, more daring. The lessons of the savanna were etched not only into their minds but into their very bones. With every meal won by strategy, they stepped further from the beasts around them and closer to what we would one day call human. Yet the predators were never far. Leopards stole into their shelters at night, carrying infants into the trees. Crocodiles lunged from the rivers, dragging the unwary into silence. The saber-toothed cats, with their long fangs and thunderous roars, ruled the grasslands with terror. Against these, the humans had no direct defense, but they had something else: memory. They remembered the shapes of danger, the sounds that preceded attack, the paths where ambushes lay. Memory became their shield, and in time, it would become their greatest weapon. Still, every dawn brought the same truth. They were small. They were fragile. They were not meant, by nature's design, to triumph over the beasts around them. And yet, step by step, they were rewriting nature's design. They were not the strongest, but they were the ones who learned. As the sun dipped low and the savanna turned to fire beneath the evening sky, a small band of humans huddled together, bellies full from stolen marrow. Around them, predators stirred, waiting for night. But for now, in this brief moment, they had won. They had eaten. They had survived. And survival in this world was everything. For it was in these moments of fear, of hunger, of small victories, that the story of humanity truly began. The savanna shimmered with heat, and the long day pressed down upon the fragile figures moving across it. The early humans were not many. A handful of adults, a few children clinging close, elders hobbling at the rear. But their presence marked something the earth had never seen before. They were not beasts with fangs, not giants with horns, not predators built for speed. They were fragile, slow, and unarmed. And yet here they were, walking forward against every odd, carrying inside them the single spark that would eventually remake the world, the spark of cooperation. It began in silence, in the way one figure glanced at another, in the way a hand gesture sent a companion circling wide, in the way a grunt of warning froze the group in place. Words as we know them had not yet formed, but meaning was flowing between them nonetheless. The world forced them to learn a new language, not of sound, but of movement, of shared instinct, of intent. This was their first weapon, and with it, they would begin to bend the savanna to their will. A herd of antelopes grazed not far ahead, their ears twitching at the faintest sound. In ages past, these animals would have been untouchable. The humans lacked the speed of the cheetah, the power of the lion, the stealth of the leopard. But they had something else: endurance. Slowly, a plan took shape. They would not charge, they would not ambush, they would follow. Hour after hour they gave chase, not with bursts of speed but with relentless pursuit. The antelopes fled, hooves pounding the ground, lungs burning with exertion. Yet, when they stopped to rest, the humans appeared again, step by step, never ceasing, never faltering. Under the merciless sun, the animals overheated. Their bodies were built for sprinting, not distance. The humans, sweating freely, panting to cool their bodies, could endure in a way no other predator could. And so, by sheer persistence, the antelope began to stumble. Its legs buckled, its pace slowed, and at last it collapsed. For the first time, the humans stood over a kill of their own making. Not scavenged, not stolen, but earned. The air rang with their cries, guttural shouts of triumph. They tore at the carcass with stone flakes, their hands slick with blood, their mouths full of meat and fat. This was more than food, it was proof. Proof that their way, their strange method of survival, could work. They were no longer shadows on the edge of the savanna. They were hunters. But hunting came with new dangers. Their triumphs did not go unnoticed. The predators that had once ignored them now began to take interest. Lions circled the edges of their feasts, leopards watched from branches above, and hyenas cackled from the dark. The humans could no longer afford to eat alone. They posted guards, one to watch the grass, one to watch the trees, one to watch the horizon. Cooperation was deepening. Trust was growing. Each life depended on the vigilance of the others. And yet, even trust was not always enough. One night, a scream tore through the camp. A leopard had struck, slipping from the darkness with the silence of death itself. A child was gone before the adults could rise, his body carried into the shadows of the trees. There was no fire to drive it back, no weapon strong enough to wound it. The humans could only wail in despair, their cries carrying into the endless night. But in grief, too, there were lessons. The next night they moved their camp closer to rocks. They stacked thorny branches at the edges, crude barriers that slowed the approach of predators. They huddled tighter, sleeping in clusters with the youngest in the center. They learned that safety was not found in strength, but in foresight. They began to reshape their world, one precaution at a time. As days passed, their tools grew sharper. A flake chipped from stone was no longer just an accident. It became intention. Strikes grew more deliberate, edges more refined. Some flakes were used to slice flesh, others to scrape hides, others to dig for roots. The world was giving them problems, and they were answering with solutions. And each new tool carved their path further from instinct and closer to intelligence. The predators, too, forced them to grow. A great saber-toothed cat haunted their hunting grounds, its fangs long as daggers, its body heavy with muscle. To face it directly was death. But they learned to watch its hunts, to shadow its kills, to time their approach when its hunger was sated. At times, they even moved in groups, their cries echoing together, their stones clattering against bone. The cat snarled, its roar shaking the air, but it retreated under the weight of their unity. That unity was the heart of their survival. Alone, they were fragile. Together, they were something else entirely. Something new, something dangerous, something no predator had ever encountered before. By day, they hunted with patience. By night, they survived with vigilance. Their children grew, not in safety, but in knowledge. Each one learned to read the land, to know the signs, to sense the dangers before they struck. And slowly, across countless generations, this knowledge accumulated. It was not yet written, not yet spoken, but it was alive, carried in gestures, in warnings, in example. The world was changing, and they were changing with it. Every predator forced them to think. Every kill forced them to plan. Every danger forced them to adapt. And in adapting, they were becoming something no other creature on Earth had ever been. Not the fastest, not the strongest, not the fiercest, but the most determined. The savanna belonged to the lion, to the leopard, to the hyena, but in time it would belong to them. The sun dips low over the savanna, casting long golden shadows that stretch across the tall grasses. The air is still, heavy with the scent of earth baked all day under the relentless African sky. For early humans, this is the most dangerous time of day. Dusk is the hour when predators stir, when lions sharpen their hunger and hyenas leave their dens to prowl. And yet, this is also the hour of opportunity. Our ancestors learned to read the rhythms of the world, the movements of beasts, the shifting winds, the cry of distant birds. They began to understand something that no other creature on Earth had mastered: timing. A group of hominins, lean, wiry, their bodies glistening with sweat, emerged silently from behind a cluster of thorn trees. In their hands, crude wooden spears sharpened with stone points. Their eyes lock on a herd of grazing antelope in the distance. The hunt has begun. But this is no reckless charge. Unlike the big cats, these humans cannot rely on speed. They cannot pounce with the crushing force of lions, nor chase with the raw stamina of wild dogs. Instead, they turn to patience, endurance, and strategy. Persistence. Hunting. The technique is as brutal as it is brilliant. Humans may not be the fastest sprinters, but they are among the greatest long-distance runners nature has ever created. With sweat glands covering their bodies, they can cool themselves while running under the sun, while animals, trapped in thick fur, begin to overheat. So the chase is not about speed, it is about time. Step by step, the humans drive the antelope forward. The herd bolts, scattering across the open plain. Dust rises into the air, the sound of hooves thundering like drums. The hunters do not chase wildly. They pick one target, an animal slightly weaker, slightly slower, perhaps limping from an old injury. The hunters jog steadily, tracking it across the horizon. The antelope gallops ahead, but after minutes of flight it must stop to breathe. The humans, relentless, appear again. They are tireless shadows, pushing the creature beyond exhaustion. Hours may pass. Sweat drips from the humans, but still they run. Their eyes are focused, their breathing steady. The antelope falters. Its sides heave with exhaustion. Its legs tremble, and at last, it collapses. The humans close in, spears ready, ending the struggle. For the first time in history, a creature weaker than the lion and slower than the cheetah has mastered a new kind of hunting. Not with fangs, but with persistence. This is a turning point in human survival. Night falls, predators closing in, but the kill is only half the battle. The smell of fresh blood carries through the wind, attracting eyes in the darkness. Hyenas, with jaws strong enough to crush bone, circle the shadows. Lions, their manes glinting under the moonlight, roar in the distance. The humans must decide, defend their kill or abandon it. Here, fire becomes more than warmth, it becomes survival. Sparks crackle as dry branches ignite, and suddenly the night is broken by a circle of flickering light. Fire keeps the predators at bay for now. The hyenas laugh from the darkness, unwilling to cross the glowing boundary. Lions pace, frustrated, snarling, their yellow eyes gleaming, but inside the fire's circle, the humans feast. They tear at the roasted meat with stone knives, share marrow from cracked bones, and pass food among the group. Children sit close to the flames, watching with wide eyes. Around this fire, something greater than survival is happening. The birth of storytelling. As flames rise, shadows dance against the trees. One of the elders gestures toward the hunt, reenacting the chase with grunts, hand motions, and rhythmic stamping. The group responds with laughter, nods, and excitement. This is more than communication. This is the beginning of story. For the first time, humans begin to pass knowledge not just through instinct, but through memory and imagination. A child learns how the hunt unfolded, how to track an animal, how to avoid the lions. A rhythm forms as voices grow louder, chants, beats, and movements merging into something primal. Around the fire, the first sparks of human culture are born. The night is filled not just with danger, but with meaning. Tools of survival. The hunter's success does not end with the kill. The carcass becomes a workshop. From the bones, they craft tools, sharp edges for cutting, heavy clubs for crushing. The skin is stripped and stretched, forming crude coverings to shield from the cold. Even sinew becomes thread for binding. To early humans, nothing is wasted. Every part of the animal feeds into survival. But more than that, each tool adds to the collective memory of the group. Skills are not lost, they are taught, from father to son, from mother to daughter, from elder to child. Every hunt becomes not just a meal, but a lesson for the future. A growing consciousness. And so, life 3.4 million years ago was not merely survival, it was transformation. With every hunt, humans reshaped their relationship with the world. They were no longer prey, cowering from predators. They were no longer scavengers, waiting for leftovers. They had become hunters, strategists who could outlast the strongest beasts on Earth. The savanna, once a place of fear, was slowly becoming a place of opportunity. But survival demanded unity. One hunter alone would die quickly. Together they endured. Together they hunted. Together they began the long march toward dominance. The fire burns low. The stars blaze above, vast and endless. The group huddles close, listening to the soft crackle of embers. The land around them is still alive with danger, but for tonight they have food, warmth, and each other. The dawn of humanity is only just beginning. The first light of dawn stretches across the horizon. The sky, painted in hues of red and orange, signals not just the birth of another day, but the constant reminder of a truth our ancestors lived with daily. Every sunrise was borrowed time. For early humans, survival was a gamble against predators, the unforgiving landscape, and the uncertainty of tomorrow. Yet each day also held possibility. New food, new knowledge, new chances to outthink the beasts that stalked them. And so, the hunt begins again. Tracking the wild. In the cool morning air, a small band moves silently through the tall grass. Their bare feet press into the earth, leaving faint impressions. Their eyes are sharp, trained to notice what others might miss. A broken twig, a patch of disturbed soil, the faint smell of musk in the breeze. Tracking is an art, born of patience. To follow an animal is to step into its mind, to see the world as it does, to anticipate its movements. A child, perhaps no older than 7, crouches low, pointing toward a set of fresh prints in the mud. The elders nod approvingly. Even at this young age, the lessons of survival are already etched into his instincts. For in this world, childhood is brief. To live, one must learn quickly. The group follows the trail, winding through the savanna until the sound of rustling grass alerts them to their quarry, a massive wildebeest, isolated from its herd. But taking it down will not be easy. The deadly balance. Every hunt is a balance between opportunity and risk. A single mistake could mean death. The wildebeest is powerful, armed with sharp horns and a body built for endurance. One misstep, and a hunter could be gored, trampled, or left behind for scavengers. So the strategy is clear. The hunters will not strike head-on. They will harass, pressure, and weaken. A shout breaks the silence, loud, sharp, primal. The hunters spread out, forming a loose circle. Spears glint in the sun as they edge closer, testing the animal's resolve. The wildebeest charges, furious, but the humans scatter, darting away just beyond reach. Again and again, they push the beast, each attack carefully measured. Their goal is not immediate victory, but exhaustion. This is the brilliance of the human hunt, patience as a weapon. The final stand. Hours later, the wildebeest stumbles, sides heaving, foam dripping from its mouth. It collapses into the dust, and the hunters close in. The spears strike with precision, ending the struggle. The air fills with the metallic scent of blood. The hunters raise their voices in triumphant cries, a sound that echoes across the plains, a declaration not just of success, but of defiance against the natural order. For every predator that stalks them, for every danger that waits in the shadows, this moment is proof. Humans will not be prey forever. The Scavenger's Challenge. But the kill is far from secure. Already vultures circle overhead, The distant whoops of hyenas signal their approach. In the tall grass, the golden flicker of lion eyes appears. The humans work quickly, stripping meat, cracking bones for marrow, and loading what they can carry. Fire is prepared to ward off scavengers, but the predators are persistent. A hyena darts close, teeth bared, only to be met with a spear thrust. Another laughs from the edge of the circle, waiting for its chance. The humans snarl, shout, and brandish torches, refusing to yield. In this eternal struggle, there are no guarantees. Sometimes the kill is kept, sometimes it is stolen, but each confrontation is a lesson, sharpening the humans' courage, strengthening their unity. Intelligence versus instinct. What truly sets humans apart is not muscle, not claws, not speed, but foresight. Where the lion relies on strength and the cheetah on speed, humans rely on thought. They remember where the herds travel, where water pools after the rain, where predators make their dens. They experiment. A new stone flake cuts deeper. A sharpened spear flies farther. A torch carried into the dark pushes back even the fiercest of beasts. Every hunt adds to a growing library of knowledge, an inheritance of survival passed down not through instinct alone, but through teaching, memory, and story. This is the quiet revolution that would one day make humans unstoppable. Nightfall. The fire circle. As darkness descends, the hunters return to camp. The meat is roasted over open flames, the smell rising into the night sky. Children sit close, gnawing on cooked bones, while elders share fragments of the day's lessons through gestures and sounds. The fire becomes more than a tool. It becomes a stage. Shadows flicker against the trees as hunters reenact the chase. Their voices rise in chants, their movements exaggerated, their faces painted with ash and earth. The children laugh, mimicking the motions. The group joins in rhythm, clapping hands against thighs, stomping feet into the dust. This is no longer just survival. It is ritual. It is memory carved into rhythm, into movement, into sound. Around these fires, the seeds of language, culture, and identity are being planted. Tools of transformation. Nearby, others work with the remains of the kill. Stone strikes against stone, chipping away flakes with sharp, deliberate blows. Each spark marks progress, the crafting of sharper blades, more efficient tools. The bones of the wildebeest become clubs, needles, and scrapers. The hide is stretched and dried, forming coverings for the cold nights. Even the sinews are stripped and twisted into cords. To early humans, every resource is a gift. Nothing is wasted. This innovation, this relentless drive to adapt, is what ensures survival. While predators rely on instinct, humans build. They shape the world with their hands and minds. A growing presence. With every successful hunt, the group grows bolder. No longer are they the timid scavengers lurking at the edge of predator kills. They are becoming predators in their own right, ones unlike any the world has ever seen. The savanna begins to echo with their presence. Trails cut through the grasslands. Camps marked by fire pits and discarded bones. Tools scattered across the earth. Remnants of ingenuity. For the first time, predators like lions and hyenas begin to notice something strange. These two-legged creatures, once fragile and weak, now stand their ground. They fight back. They endure. The balance of power is shifting. The weight of tomorrow. Yet with progress comes burden. The hunt is never without loss. A hunter gored by a wildebeest. A child carried away by a leopard in the night. Disease, hunger, drought. Each day brings new trials. But unlike other creatures, humans hold on to their dead. They linger near the places of loss, touching the bones, tracing the memory of those gone. Around the fire, stories are told not just of hunts, but of those who did not return. It is grief, yes, but also legacy. In remembering, humans find meaning. In mourning, they find unity. And in unity, they find the strength to face another dawn. Closing of Part 5. The fire burns low. The stars shimmer overhead, vast and unending. In the distance, predators prowl, their roars echoing through the night. But within the circle of light, humans sit together, fed, armed, and united. They are still fragile, still vulnerable, but something has begun that no force on earth can stop. The age of human dominance is coming. The night is quiet, save for the crackle of fire and the restless whispers of the wind. Sparks drift upward into the darkness, joining the stars that shimmer above. Around the circle of flames, the hunters sit in silence, their bodies weary, their bellies full. The day has been won, but in this world, victory is always temporary. Tomorrow, the struggle begins again. Yet, within this silence lies something extraordinary. For these humans, fragile yet resilient, are not only surviving, they are changing. Every choice, every scar, every memory of blood spilled and fire lit is shaping them into something new. The predators may still stalk the shadows, but the balance of power is beginning to tilt. The landscape of tomorrow. The land stretches endless before them. Rolling savannas where herds of antelope thunder across the plains, rivers where crocodiles lurk unseen beneath the surface, forests where leopards watch silently from the branches above. It is a land of plenty, but also of peril. Every feature of this environment demands adaptation. The heat of day burns skin, so shade must be found. The cold of night chills bones, so fire must be tended. Waterholes provide life, but also draw lions and elephants. To drink is to risk. To eat is to gamble. But humans learn, always. Where others falter, they find new ways. Where others perish, they endure. The birth of strategy. Once, they scavenged leftovers, timidly stealing scraps from greater predators. Now, they set traps. They plan ambushes. They carve weapons sharper than the teeth of the beasts they fear. When a lion stalks them, they stalk the lion in return. When hyenas gather in the dark, they answer with fire. When drought strips the land of water, they remember the hidden pools deep within the rock. Theirs is not the strength of the body, it is the strength of the mind. In every action, they are becoming something more than animal. They are becoming human. The power of fire. In the heart of the night, flames flicker and dance. Fire is no longer just warmth or protection. It is a symbol, a gathering place, a tool that shapes destiny. Meat roasted over flame strengthens muscles for longer hunts. Smoke drives away insects and predators. Light pushes back the suffocating darkness. But fire is also story. Here, around the circle, gestures become language, shadows become myths, and the hunt transforms into memory. Children mimic the chase. Elders shape the lessons into rhythm. And, slowly, over countless nights, communication takes root. The first sparks of culture. The first embers of identity. Tools, bones, and dreams. The stones, once mere weapons, are becoming instruments of progress. Hands that once cracked bones for marrow now craft tools with precision. A sharper flake here, a heavier strike there. Over time, accidents become technique. A stick hardened in the fire becomes a spear. A bone polished by hand becomes a scraper. A cord twisted from sinew becomes the ancestor of rope. Every creation carries forward, passed from hand to hand, generation to generation. With each innovation, survival becomes easier, hunts become safer, and life, though still fragile, lasts a little longer. In this way, humanity begins its long climb out of the shadows. The eternal conflict. But make no mistake, the struggle never ends. A roar in the distance, the rustle of grass in the darkness, the eyes of predators still gleam beyond the firelight, waiting, watching. Sometimes the humans win. Sometimes they lose. Each loss scars the memory of the group, but each victory strengthens their resolve. It is in this cycle of danger and triumph that humans are forged. Predators remain powerful, but something new is rising. Something they cannot kill with tooth or claw. A force more dangerous than any beast. A creature who remembers, who plans, who refuses to yield. Toward the future. One day, these hunters will walk out of Africa. They will carry fire across continents. They will shape tools into axes, spears, bows. They will tame wolves into dogs, carve shelters from stone, and paint their stories on cave walls for generations yet unborn. But here, in these first fragile moments, it all begins. The fire, the tools, the unity, the will to survive. Life, 3.4 million years ago, is harsh, unforgiving, and merciless. And yet, from within this crucible of suffering, something unstoppable is emerging, something that will one day dominate the earth. Closing narration, outro style. So as the firelight flickers and fades, remember this. We were not always the rulers of this world. Once, we were the hunted. Once, we trembled in the dark. Once, our survival was uncertain. But it was here, in these early days against the predators and the endless night, that we learned the skills that define us still: courage, unity, intelligence, and persistence. This is where the story of humanity begins. This is where we first rose against the impossible. This is the dawn of us.